Thank you.
I know that we're expecting a few more people, but I'd like to get started as close to on time as possible, so I can start off with the preliminaries, introducing who we are. I'm Connie, and this is my husband, Martin Jordan, and we actually live in Sarasota, Florida. Martin's been a professional medium for well over 15 years. 4.5 years ago, this weekend, to be exactly 4.5 years ago, we lost the physical presence of our 16-year-old son, 4 months after a leukemia diagnosis. And I'm very, very grateful for what Martin did for a living, because we have never lost contact with our son. It still sucks as a parent, I'm not going to lie to you. We still have to grieve and go through that process when you lose the physical presence. And it's certainly not easy, no matter who you are and what you know. But we are so blessed to be able to work with our son. And I think part of our mission is to educate parents and the adults on these kids like my son. My son in the hospital told me that he knew he was an avatar, which is a master teacher. He knew that. And he definitely led his life as one. And so since he has crossed, he has shared a lot of information with us, and we work with him with these mediumship events. Now Martin has got a music CD out. It was, I think Andrew started giving you songs almost immediately, didn't he?
Yeah.
And so we started to see that a concert was forming. So in '09, I made Martin go into the office for a whole weekend and record his CD when Metaphysical Church, what a shock. Legal battles and fighting amongst themselves. The music director couldn't help us with the recording. And I said, you know what, when we're at the concert, you're not going to have a full band. I said, get in there and record. You know, we'll be unplugged. And so he was recording the whole weekend. He'd come out, my fingers are sore, and I'm like, shut up and get in there. Keep playing.
I mean, if Bon Jovi can do it, I can do it.
That's right. That's right. So that's the Only Love Is Real CD and Martin will be sharing some of the songs with you tonight. Because music is such an amazing vibration, and it helps lift the energy, and also heads up. What would you call this, Martin? Really nothing is off limits as far as humor goes.
No.
No, I mean, even with our son, the night that he passed, Martin and I were alone with him, with his body in the hospital, and we laughed. I mean, it wasn't like, you know, I had the tears down my, because I was in shock.
You cried too.
Oh yeah, oh yes, yes I did. I didn't cry with my sister.
No.
I wouldn't even call that crying, I'm not sure what that was, but we won't go there. But I was sitting there in shock, and Martin said, look at him. So I looked at my son, and he put a smile on his face. I'm like, oh no, you did not. And I looked at him and I said, start breathing, you little master with a B, and then I'll be impressed. And he put a bigger smile on his face. I'm like, are you kidding me? To where when my daughter finally made it to the hospital, she came in, she goes, is he smiling? I go, yeah, he did that. So when he crossed, Martin was telling me a lot of what had happened to him when he left his body. And so we got it in bits and pieces that night that he passed. And then it was a few months later that Martin got the full channel, which is in the book, No Regrets. And when Andrew passed, he was given the name Glen Cree, which is Gaelic for pure heart. So when we talk about pure heart, we're talking about my son's higher self. But his name is Andrew, and so we also refer to him as Andrew. So he'll come to us as our son, and other times he'll come to us as the master teacher that he is. And with the book No Regrets, what I did was, Martin's from Ireland, and our whole family's over there. So I had to keep a blog so they could know what was going on, because we didn't have phone. You couldn't call. We were in the PICU for 9 days, and there's always a lot of chaos going on. So I had a blog, and then it became my thing, which I didn't realize that people couldn't even, it was their morning coffee and my blog on how Andrew was doing. And so people from around the world were following this blog, because we had worked for Doreen Virtue for a couple of years. So my son got to know a lot of these people when we would staff her class. So I had all these people following it. And finally, what was it, in 2010, I think we started working on taking the blog and pulling this book together. And we finally released it on, he told me, it was February 22nd, 222. I couldn't figure out why I kept seeing 222, 22s. I said, okay, now he's just yelling at me with all these twos. And he was passed on 1022, around 1022, was born at 202 on May 12th. So, you know, it's a lot of things you just, you got to take a look at. So when I started putting the book together, I was really amazed at how powerful it is. There's just so many layers to this book, and it's because it's Andrew's teachings, you know, on how he looked at life, and even because he was very happy. His friends would get annoyed with him, going, "Why are you so happy?" He goes, "Because I choose to be. Why would I not be happy?" And it's just the stories. The one that to me is the most powerful is that here he was. He had lost his hair. He was 6 foot, 150 pounds. He was under 100 pounds. He couldn't swallow his own saliva, let alone eat. And he loved to eat. And he's getting chemo shot into his spine twice a week upon the other treatments and nonsense and testing he had to go through. And this is during the summer when his friends are home. And I had to help him in the bathroom. And so I'm sitting on the floor and we're talking, and I said, "You know, when we get out of here, we're only going to remember the good times." And he goes, "You know what, Mommy, I know." He goes, "You know what else?" I go, "What, honey?" He goes, "I'm happy." And I looked at him and I said, "What?" I'm thinking, he's not medicated. You know, like, seriously? He's not even on any of the good drugs by this point, you know. And I go, "What?" He goes, "Yeah, I'm happy." He said, "You see all this?" And he pointed to his IV pole, he pointed to the machines in his room and all, you know, the hospital stuff, and he says, "None of that decides if I'm happy, only I do. And I'm happy." I thought, wow, you are a master teacher. So he's here tonight. He always works with us, and he'll take the relatives that are going to come in and friends and whoever, and he'll line them up. And this is who I named my son after, my friend Andrew. I've known since middle school. And I think he has a touch of OCD from you, because he likes to have everything lined up and nice in order. And I would go to his house in high school. I go, "Dude, really? Your closet is all lined up? Short sleeve, long sleeve, color coordinated? Wow." So my son, if you go into his drawers now, his shirts are all nicely folded and stacked very nicely. So we like, I'll give the rules now, right?
Yes,
Yes.
the rules.
We have some rules for the mediumship. You can tell we live in Florida. All the sun ones are empty. If his Irish relatives would be here, they would be up against the window. We went on a Mediterranean cruise with them, and it was in June. And it's actually a chilly evening in June, and it stays light till like 12 o'clock at midnight. And we were at the house before we were leaving for the cruise, and they kept moving closer to where they were up against the fence, trying to get the last bit of sun. And we're going to the Mediterranean, so we're going to Italy, we're on a boat, there's going to be a lot of sun. They stood on the chairs like it was getting closer to the sun. And they're the ones coming over in June to Orlando. I said, yeah, you'll get plenty of sun then. So as we've been doing these shows, we found that there's a couple of rules that we need to help the audience have a better experience. The rule number 1 is don't tell Martin no. You may say, "I don't know, I'm not sure, I'll have to look into it, I'll have to ask." Could be. But do not tell him no, because he's getting the information, he knows what he's getting. So just kind of be open, which is rule number 2. Have an open mind and open heart. Because if you come here with the blinders, and you just want to hear from Dad, I only want to hear from Dad, that's it, that's all I want to hear from, and then, some ex-boyfriend comes through, what the hell does he want? I've had that. We've had that on, I can't tell you how many occasions we've had that. It was a friend of mine that did that. What does he? She wanted to hear from her brother, and her brother had passed from leukemia, and this is years before Andrew was diagnosed. And you have to honor the process. You just have to. You've got to trust that Spirit knows what they're doing. So by having that open heart, you got to have an open mind. They come through with the most bizarre things, obscure people. I finally had to tell my mother, "Get a reading. I don't know who the hell these people are." Nobody would come through that I knew. Not that I had a lot, but I had great-grandparents and grandparents, never heard a word. So she could validate every one of them. So it really, if you have paper or whatever, or if you have a friend, please write down names, because I'm telling you, I can't tell you how many calls he gets. "Oh my God, I was able to validate every name." I know. That's why you're not allowed to tell me no. And they do. It's just obscure stuff, and it's usually people will come through that you're not thinking about. And so we've had people come through for your neighbor, just because they needed to be here and they weren't. And there's times spirits come through for people that should have been here, said they're going to be here. And it's like, oh, well, that's great. It's like, really? You didn't know they were going to be here? So keep that open mind and open heart. And when Martin comes to you, when he says D like David, it could be David, but sometimes he's not getting the full name. He's trying to get you to, so it's, you don't think it's an E, so he'll say a D, or what is it, J? A J or G sounding name. So he'll give an example of what it's sounding like to him. So just keep that. That's how he works with that. The other thing is yes or no. No diarrhea of the mouth. That's rule number 3. Like if he says, "I'm getting a Joe," yeah, that's my father who died from a heart attack on May 2nd. It's like, okay, we're done. So So yes or no, very short answers to help. Because they're giving him signs and symbols. Sometimes if they're very powerful, he'll get the name, which is amazing because he's even got Hispanic names, because normally he'll go, okay, I don't know how to pronounce this. And other times he'll hear it clear enough that he's able to get the name. So it's really deciding on where the spirit is, because everybody, it's a different vibration. So he's just trusting what he's getting. And then rule number 4 is, don't tell him no. See rule number 1. Now we always open up the show with, is it Only Love Is Real? Okay. This is the very first song that Andrew came through with from Martin. And he was a John Denver fan. 16 years old, and we would hear John Denver blaring out of his room. You know, and Martin and I are looking at each other, what do? You know, turn that noise down! It's like, we listen to John Denver, you know, Country Roads blaring out of his room, or any song. And, or Josh Groban, Buddy Holly, the Beatles, he loved all those. And in the hospital, which is in the book, he had a visitation by John Denver, and he was in his picture. It was so amazing. Yeah, he had that visitation, and he thought it was a dream, and I said, no, honey, I said, John is honoring you, because his friends made fun of him. His girlfriend said, you know, that wife-beating pothead, really? I'm like, I mean, he didn't care what anybody said. He loved John Denver. And he fell in love. This was a cool story, too. His girlfriend sent him, while he was in the PICU, the gold record, Annie song for John Denver. That's what the receipt said. He opened it, and it was John Lennon's Imagine. And he knew the Beatles, but he didn't know about John Lennon's career, so he fell in love with John Lennon. And that was on his MySpace as well. And he just loved that song Imagine from that time on. So he got to meet up with them when he crossed, John Denver and John Lennon. And you'll hear in The Lonely Love Is Real, you'll be able to tell their influences without a doubt. It was funny because he said that John Denver was everything that he thought it would be. They jam, and he just loved spending time with him. And he says, John Lennon goes, Daddy, a little intense. Not a woman fuzzy like John Denver. I said, yeah, that would be right. So this is the first song, Only Love Is Real.
Sliding on the sleigh grass, running with the wind and rain, trying not to let it pass. Then again, when life is good, I carry on the way I should. Think of you and all I do, and I'll say a prayer for me and you. Only love is real, that's what we have. Only love is real, it's just how I feel. That's the way I feel. When you leave at last from here and find your way above the sound of war and death and judgment, drop your neat suit on the ground and fly away to our place where freedom calls for every race. Know there's more to what you see than just usual mediocrity. Only love is real, that's what we have here. Only love is real, that's just how I feel. That's the way I feel. I am here for just a while, one day you'll laugh and smile. I want to teach the world to know how to heal and how to grow. And I will walk the lines of time, teaching in my boundless rhyme. Teach compassion from the start, I'll keep the song in my pure heart. Only love is real, that's what we have here.
Thank you.
Okay, yeah, I also forgot to add that well, it's a small enough group here, Martin will probably be able to get to everybody, but when we do bigger groups, if you don't get a reading, it doesn't mean there's not a message. Because even when Martin and we will talk about the messages that came through that even were for us. And it's really, that's why I say open heart and open mind for this. We did a show that there was, 40 odd people there, and the woman said, I didn't get a reading tonight, but boy did I get a lot of messages. So it is about paying attention to other people's readings, because they all come together, and it's funny, wasn't it here the last time? Spirits were coming through, and they were like BFFs, and the people here didn't know each other. But on the other side, their spirit friend, they were like BFFs now, because they kind of came together, because you guys were in this group together.